What are some non-obvious early signs that a relationship is coming to an end? Story 1. I got dumped after a 9-year relationship about 6 weeks ago. Retrospectively, I somewhat knew something was wrong for about a year before the relationship ended, but I definitely didn't know that I knew at the time. Things I've recognized since the breakup include, oh my, he became more distant. I chalked this up to the challenges he was facing as he started a new and very difficult career. He stopped making sacrifices for me. He had to move away for 6 months for training for his new jobs, and he wouldn't come see me on weekends because he was so busy. This made sense at the time. But now I realize that while sometimes he probably was busy, if he had been feeling the same way about our relationship as he used to, he would have made the time at least some of the time. The one time he did visit me, we spent much of the time visiting his friends. I remember thinking when he left that weekend that maybe he'd want to visit me more now that he realized that it meant he could see his friends too. It didn't occur to me that seeing me should have been reason enough to want to visit. He stopped saying I love you. I made the unhealthy decision to scroll back through our text messages and noticed that between September 21st and November 8th, I said I love you via text 45 times and he only said it back 13 times. And he only said it first 7 times. Somehow I didn't notice this as a problematic sign at the time, even though it's so obviously a problem looking back. I started questioning whether I should tell him things. I didn't want to bring up kids or when we'd buy our first dog or successes I had experienced at work because I was worried that it would upset him or make him feel badly about himself or just otherwise the conversation wouldn't be as good. If you feel uncomfortable talking openly with your partner about issues you're facing or anything in your life at all, then that's a major problem. Our intimacy life became less active, with both of us making excuses about being tired or stressed or otherwise not in the mood, even though we were newly long distance and didn't see each other as often, and probably should have found it next to impossible to stay away from each other. Not sure what I could have done to be more aware of these things as they were happening. I obviously should have noticed, as these signs are so big. But when you're blinded by the hope that your love is enough to get you through, it's super easy to put blinders on. Just try never to take your relationship for granted and be honest with yourself, and hopefully you'll be able to notice these signs and work on the relationship together before it's too late. Answer: devastating to be at the end of a long relationship. While retrospectively, one can pick up signs after having grown together as a couple for 9 years, it would be hard to identify them as they are happening. Hang in there, op. Takes 2 to tango, clap, and pull off a successful relationship. Don't blame yourself for the way things turned out. Time heals everything. Story 2. When it starts to feel like a bottomless pit, no matter how much effort you put into it, things don't improve and you get less and less back every day. Alternatively, when you realize that you can't problem solve for shoot, when the two of you are together, even simple tasks that require nothing more than open communication. Relationships require work, but they also need to be functional. If basic incompatibility keeps the two of you from working together as a partnership, it's fudge doomed. Answer: I asked a friend for some advice when I felt like my past relationship was rocky. I just wasn't sure if it was worth ending. She asked me, would you two be friends if you weren't in a relationship? Nope, nothing in common anymore. I ended it. Edit: my first official Reddit comment, and I can't believe how many upvotes there are and the conversation that sparked from it. Sorry for some late replies. I'm still learning how to Reddit. Well, that and Christmas celebrations. Story 3. You don't want to see them anymore. I thought I was just tired from starting a new job and anxious about upcoming changes in my life. Nah, turns out I just didn't want to see him anymore. It felt like going to work. I spend 9 hours a day bugging guys about making phone calls and filling out paperwork. And then I realized I'd just go straight to his house and bug him about doing homework and calling the vet for his dog. Answer: this was how I knew my last relationship was over too. I started getting annoyed at a lot of things he would do and say, even though they weren't that bad. And I would get annoyed when he wanted me to come over. I realized I should be looking forward to seeing my boyfriend, not wishing he would leave me alone. I was stressed about life stuff and realized I wasn't in the right place to have a relationship. Story 4. Looking forward to him being away at work, etc., or me not looking forward to coming home. That's only an example if you live together, of course. Edit: I didn't think I needed to clarify, but obviously I'm not talking about wanting alone time or a little space from one another every now and then. That's normal and healthy. I'm talking excessive amounts of alone time, when you enjoy being away from them more than you enjoy their presence. Answer, I found myself on the opposite end of this. You feel like they are never, ever in rush to get home or put effort into hanging out with you. I was in denial for a long time. And then I decided to stop asking him to hang out, stopped asking when he would be home, stopped attempting to line up my free time with his. As soon as I stopped putting in the effort, our relationship immediately disintegrated. It hurt, but felt good to really know for sure that he was done. I knew it wasn't normal that it was such a struggle to get him to spend time with me, even though he would tell me I was being crazy. Story 5. There was some quote I read a long time ago about relationships that rely on the feeling of love rather than actual dedication to the relationship are doomed to fail, and I've personally found a lot of truth in that. All of my previous relationships ended when I realized that I was the only one dedicated to making it work. It also helps to remind of that little mantra when things get rough in my current relationship. What's more important? Winning an argument over something entirely insignificant or my partner's feelings? Is this a win for the relationship or a win for me? Etc. Specifically speaking, my red flags were indifference. Even the possibility of breaking up doesn't seem to faze them. They stare at you blankly as you cry your feelings of hurt out. Extreme defensiveness and never offering a real apology, if any. It did not matter how calmly or how non-accusational I was. When trying to bring up an issue or concern, it would get completely turned around and I was made to feel like a terrible person. There was always some personality trait of mine that was actually causing all of the issues, and it was something that I needed to apologize for and work on. I found myself saying, well, once X happens, things will get better. If I just change ways about myself, my situation, he'll love me again like he used to, and so on. Of course, nothing made a difference. There is so much more. Very obvious abusive and manipulative warning signs. Obvious now, hindsight 2020. But like I said, everything leads back to the general lack of commitment to the relationship. It's a really, really awful feeling watching the person you love fall out of love with you. It hurts so much. It feels easier to try and ignore it or wait until that X or Y happens. But it all just prolongs the inevitable. Sadly, there is no guaranteed immediate relief of breaking up. It can take months, sometimes years. Eventually, though, it gets better. I grew so much by ending my previous relationships. I gained more respect for myself. I'm a better communicator, a more reflective person, and am happier. And I'm sure they are as well. I still have some ongoing baggage that haunts me sometimes, but I'm working on it. Answer: it's relieving to know that you're now a better person and a lot more happier. I wish I had that resilience and not gotten afraid of ever loving at all, ever again. I want to be in a relationship real bad, but I just can't because I can't trust anyone, myself included, to put in the effort for the relationship. It's been a year now, and while she's out and about living her life with her group of friends and possibly quite completely forgotten about me, I'm over here trying to forget and to become better, but just can't let go of the past. What is it that hurt me so much I'm even scared to have crushes? Don't know. I'm sorry for the rant. Story 6. If marriage here was mine, she didn't want to put her name on the house we were about to buy. She still gave me money to help me get it, but she wouldn't put her name on the mortgage. I forget the reason, but it went in one ear and out the other. It should have been a red flag, but I was naive. We were divorced 1 year later. She didn't want that house with me because she was already thinking about leaving me. Answer: she never changed her name. Okay, no biggie. She refused to consider having children. It's her body, her right. She was always quiet and uninterested around my family when she would actually visit. She's just an introvert. She would not want to hear about my problems with work or about my interests more than a couple of minutes. All right, I'm just really needy. You get the idea. Now that she's moved out, she wants to spend time together because she's lonely. It's really weird and kind of sad. Edit? Holy fudge, this blew up overnight. Story 7. In my last relationship, neither of us had a car to drive and we lived 50 minutes away from each other. We had things budgeted out so one of us could take an Uber to my house or house and back for the weekend. When I occasionally questioned the inconvenient cost of the Uber, she would say, "It doesn't matter. It's worth spending that money just to see you." After a month or so, plus a couple fights, tough conversations about things, she changed her mind about taking an Uber up to see me, saying it's not worth the money I need to save. I knew a little beforehand the relationship was rocky, but after hearing that, there was no way of being able to save it. She's a very nice person, though. We just have different points of views on things. I still think about her all the time and hope she's doing well. Story 8. Contempt. Relationships don't survive contempt, and early, small expressions of disgust grow larger and more entrenched as people build on what they have become accustomed to getting away with. Eye-rolling when the partner talks, cutting them off in conversation, dismissing with sarcastic generalizations, oh, as if you'd ever, belittling the partner when in the safety of groups. All these things are signs that the iceberg is dead ahead. Story 9. Sase, take all of these with a handful of salt. Every relationship and person is different, and it applies to how they express love, affection, or how their relationship works. If you're making connections between this thread in your relationship that you weren't aware of already, it's likely you're fine. Most of this thread is drama and extremes. Story 10. When they become non-committal on plans, especially those that involve reservations, when the conversation seems less full than it used to be, as if you are just going through the motions of asking how each other's day was. When deep, personal conversations either remain more superficial than before or stay mired in prolonged unresolved conflict. When they ask if you ever think about dating other people, not non-obvious, but how on earth I missed that one is beyond me. When their 5-year plan changes vastly, seemingly out of the blue. Story 11. When the communication slows to a trickle. When you look up one day and realize y'all haven't had a conversation beyond what to have for dinner or what movie to watch. It's much more obvious when communication dies altogether. But when it slows to a trickle, when you notice it's going, that's when you should pay extra attention. But when you put in your best efforts to get the conversation flowing again and they don't reciprocate, that's when the relationship is in real trouble. Story 12. When little things they do that might have been cute or attractive before start to irritate you. For example, boyfriend is so smart and intellectual we have the most interesting conversations. Sometime later, boyfriend is so smart, but every time we have a conversation, he argues with me, even though I am a subject matter expert at this and have personal experience. Story 13. If you keep asking them to hang out, or make plans for something but they ignore you, they stop responding to your texts, start calling you crazy because you got mad for their lack of communication, knowingly lie to you and or conveniently hide things from you, won't make time for you but expects you to be available for them anytime. Story 14. When he came home from work after I had slept over, this is probably a month and a half into the relationship, I skipped out of his room to see him with a big smile on my face, and he excitedly greeted the while my smile faded slowly as I realized he wasn't even going to look at me after he was done. We were not in a fight at the time or anything. I should have known at that point. Even as an adult, I have the excuse that it was my first relationship. Edit, wording. Another edit, clarification that the hurt came from that he didn't acknowledge me at all, and it wasn't jealousy over the dog or mail, just creating the scene in your mind with my words. Story 15. If something happens that you want to discuss with someone, get advice, share good news, sympathy for something, etc., and your SO is not the first person you want to go to, then the relationship is on its way out. Not necessarily if it happens once or twice, but if it happens frequently, then they are not the person for you. Story 16. When you Google the signs of a failing relationship, people have an awareness of the state of the relationship even if they are not conscious of it. I found myself Googling if I should break up with my ex before I clocked. I was thoroughly unhappy in my relationship. Story 17. Often, but not always, for romantic relationships is a difference in intimacy preferences. For example, your partner wants intimacy less often than you and seems to avoid having intimacy, makes excuses, whether they are valid or not. Along the same vein, avoidance in general. They always seem to have something that's keeping them busy, or they have previous obligations. They won't answer their phone very quickly or at all. Story 18. When you return to Rome after a successful campaign against the Cimbrian Teutones, bringing much fame and glory to Rome, and he joins the Optimates, in opposition to you, adding some more, commands the cavalry wing at the Battle of Vercellae, and takes all the credit. When he captures the Numidian king Jugurtha in a daring feat, winning himself much prestige and fame. He's not your man, he's Lucius Cornelius Sulla. Story 19. I used to date this guy who was struggling mentally, financially, and was just pretty lonely. We got close and fell in love. Then over the course of a few years, he wouldn't do anything to change his situation. So I helped. We got him out of debt, new clothes, encouraged and went with him to the gym, motivated him to work on his side project every day, and so on. After he got his shoot together, he felt happier and got more confidence. He then dumped me. I always wonder why he ended things after I made so much effort to help him better himself. Did he get more confidence? Did he suddenly think he was too good for me? IDK. Story 20. Silence and lots of it. When you start texting, calling each other less, it usually means your SO found someone new and exciting to talk to. Most of my exes just ghosted me instead of formally breaking up with me. So that is my experience with it. People get bored. I don't know how people find someone to marry or stay in relationships for 2 years. My relationships are usually passionate for a year and then fade away. I'm getting a little sad typing this, but meh, I guess this applies to people in their early 20s mostly. Maybe people who are older wiser have longer lasting relationships. I really don't know how you all do it. Maybe if I had more money, it will last longer. This comment went from 0-100 real quick. Fudge. Answer. This happened to me a lot in my early 20s, and as a genuine person, it was super frustrating. It was a mix between first dates that went nowhere to passionate flings lasting no more than weeks to a couple months. Someone else in this thread mentioned that they're good at giving the girlfriend experience, which describes what I've provided. Basically, the girls I've dated used it to keep themselves occupied until the next shiny object that gave them flighty feelings came by. I just turned 30 and dislike that I partied too hard, some of my prime years tolerating this behavior, wondering why people suck and expending so much time and energy on them when they couldn't give two shoot. Most of this can be chalked up to low self-esteem and lack of experience. I think age does play a role, i.e., slightly older folks with more life experience and wisdom are more conscientious of how their actions affect others. On the other hand, you might be lucky and just meet the right person at the right time. Continue putting yourself out there. I promise it gets better over time. Story 21. When they're in the same room as you and you try to talk to them and get 1 or 2 word answers, or when I talk to my wife, now ex, I would be talking to her, then I would stop mid-sentence and just look at her. She wouldn't even notice I stopped talking. There's nothing as loud as silence. Story 22. Before I start, there's no such thing as an early sign that a relationship is for sure coming to an end, but there are a lot of signs that it may not last, or that it will not be a healthy relationship for all parties if it does. One of the very early signs is when you are focused on who they might be if, insert infinite possible things, or how great they will be when they eventually grow out of, insert infinite possible habits. People are who they are, and it is extremely rare for that to change. How people behave and how they adapt to who they are so that they can have healthier relationships is also pretty rare because it's the start of the eventual real change. Unfortunately, even people who will eventually make big changes end up having to travel a road you are not willing to follow. Not because you won't love who they will become, but because the process of their growth will come with relationship-damaging moments that set habits that, you guessed it, require an environment change in order to move past, which almost always means ending the current relationship in addition to whatever else. I'm sure there will be a bunch of people who downvote this because it offends their misguided internal illusions regarding what people are and how we grow in real life, and there absolutely are exceptions to this general trend. However, it's pretty much like betting you're the one person who won't get run over if you sprint blindfolded through traffic. It can happen, but it's an extremely foolish assumption to make. 200B. It takes two very, very self-aware people who both are more concerned with the health of their relationship than hanging on to their own ego or being right or whatever. And those people either didn't have problems to begin with or they've already come a long way on their journey. X200B, that's my 2 cents. Story 23. When you get home from work at the end of the day and your spouse doesn't want to hug you or even talk to you. That was the last year of my marriage. I called her on it a few times and then gave up, and eventually we divorced. For many other reasons as well, of course, but in hindsight, this was a huge symptom. Story 24. When you sit down, if your directional facing angle is exactly 109.47 degrees different than your SO, and you did that subconsciously, you have a 92 of breaking up with them in the next 90 days. It's not super obvious for most people, but I usually whip out my protractor in coffee shops and start laying down some mad truths. Story 25. Friends generally pick up on it before the people in the relationship. When your pals can't say anything nice, or shut up when your girlfriend-boyfriend walks in, or they are having pointed conversations questioning your judgment for dating this person, then that's a bad sign. One friend, that might just be a fluke. Multiple friends and you're in a bad relationship. Story 26. Hey peoples, just a quick reminder. Most of these are really early signs, but no reason to assume you're doomed without solution. Be cool, have love, and remember, nobody is perfect. Not you and also not your SO. Any relationship that goes a bit deeper than a random coworker classmate will have issues. Obviously, the person you're being most vulnerable with is going to be a relationship with issues. You've fallen in love with each other, There is a reason. Your SO is awfully incapable in reading your mind, and so are you. Be sure to calmly explain what's up and let them do the same. Good luck, good love. A local Cupido. Story 27. Yeah, a lot of these signs are not done deals that the relationship is over or that it needs to be over. People today seem to be clueless when it comes to being a team with your SO and working through things together. If these answers have made you uncomfortable or self-conscious about your own relationship, don't let them. Relationships of any kind require work, especially romantic ones. Life isn't a Disney movie. Things don't fall magically into place. There is no one waiting for you. Miscommunication and people doing dumb things happen because we're human. Quit quitting on people over minor shoot. Story 28. When you feel like it's more effort than the return, you should be happy, and your relationship shouldn't feel like a job or obligation. There are instances of people staying together where both are just sort of indifferent and clearly not a madly in love couple, but they can make it work because they each do just enough to remain content and not make each other miserable. This isn't ideal for most people, but it can work. Once you cross that line and feel like the relationship is just draining you of energy, your freedoms, your happiness, etc., that's a good sign to just end it. Story 29. You may know Dr. John Gottman as the guy that can predict divorce with over 90 accuracy. His life's work on marital stability and divorce prediction has been well documented in the national media, and it was even featured in the one bestseller Blink by Malcolm Gladwell. After watching thousands of couples argue in his lab, he was able to identify specific negative communication patterns that predict divorce. He called them the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and they are criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Contempt is the most destructive of the 4 horsemen because it conveys "I'm better than you. I don't respect you." It's so destructive, in fact, that couples who are contemptuous of each other are more likely to suffer from infectious illness than couples who are not contemptuous of each other. The target of contempt is made to feel despised and worthless. Treating others with disrespect and mocking them with sarcasm are forms of contempt. So are hostile humor, name-calling, mimicking, and/or body language, such as eye-rolling and sneering. When contempt begins to overwhelm your relationship, you tend to forget entirely your partner's positive qualities, at least while you're feeling upset. You can't remember a single positive quality or act. This immediate decay of admiration is an important reason why contempt ought to be banned from marital interactions. Contempt erodes the bond that holds a couple securely together. It's impossible to build connection when your relationship is deprived of respect. Here's the good news, Dr. Gottman's ability to predict divorce is contingent on behaviors not changing over time. You can reverse a pattern of contempt in your relationship before it's too late. The antidote lies in building fondness and admiration. Dr. Gottman discovered that the best way to measure fondness and admiration is to ask couples about their past. How did they meet? What were their first impressions of each other? Story 30. Don't want to come home after work, feeling like you can't talk about anything because it will inevitably lead to an argument. Would rather read it on my computer alone than spend time on the couch watching Netflix with your SO. Saying stuff like, "Oh, I don't know if his GF is coming," when going out with your friend and Hisher, so you get time away even though it clearly should have been a double date. When suddenly other people start being attractive again. When being right and proving it is more important in an argument than working through it together. Story 31. She gets a very drastic haircut. When a person feels lost and needs to change everything about their life, they would start where they have control. A woman's hair is both something she controls and is something many feel is a big part of who they are. Seen it a few times. Had it once with an ex. Really interesting what a huge red flag it could have been in retrospect. Story 32. When you ask after the well-being of a person, wish them on their birthdays and other occasions, express sympathy when they are going through difficult times, and offer them compliments and do other social niceties out of a need to comply with formalities and because they're the socially acceptable things to do rather than a genuine interest in or concern for that person. This applies to not just romantic relationships, but relationships in general. Story 33. When you are more happy to be alone than with them. When being with them feels like something you have to do. When someone takes the other for granted. When you stop saying "I love you." When nothing changes in either of your lives, but you still spend less time together. When things that used to make you laugh in the other now irritate you. When you fantasize, not intimacy romantically, about other people. When they send you a text and you don't get happy about it. Story 34. I just had a very long 5-year relationship end. 2 non-obvious signs I missed. 1, gaps in regular communication. Just something simple like you used to snap text every day or however long your normal communication amount is, and then 2 days went by without a text snap. It seems very minor, they were busy, etc. But when it starts to happen regularly and you realize that there are now every so often gaps in those communication lines, it can mean that, in my case, they are talking to someone new, not cheating, just casual talking, or they are outright not interested in talking. Things that Heshi should have an issue with are suddenly okie dokie. I guess you can go hanging out with the guys, but sure it sounds fun. If you know it normally bothers him or her, and it's suddenly, being the keyword, doesn't, then that is a sign they don't feel the need to invest in you anymore. Both of these showed noticeable symptoms at least 6 months out, but looking back, it was closer to 18. As some others have stated, relationships don't end when you start fighting all the time. They end when you should fight but don't. Story 35. When you are the one constantly providing the emotional support, but your partner doesn't provide any for you when you need it. When you ask how your partner is doing, and they will tell you, then change the subject without asking how you are doing. Or they always find a way to make a conversation about them. At that point, it just feels like a one-way street, and if fudge sucks, story 36. If you're someone who shows affection or likes to receive affection, most through physical contact, or your love language is touch, and you're all of a sudden not getting any, or it's steadily decreasing, it's a sign. I'm someone who very much needs physical touch. It doesn't have to be much. Anything from cuddling and kissing to a fleeting but purposeful graze or touching of the elbow, lower back, and everything in between. I found that my ex and I were still able to have fun conversations and watch movies and basically still be friends, but she went from being very touchy with me to almost avoiding getting close to me. Obviously, I don't think being in a relationship obligates someone to physical affection, but I don't think I'm the only person here that gets what I mean. When I tried to bring it up and talk about why she seemed so distant, she didn't really know what to say. In the end, we slowly drifted because we just had different things we wanted from each other. We're still good friends, if anyone's wondering. Story 37. The tricky part is not have relationship experience. I was in a failing relationship with most or all of the signs mentioned, and I dismissed it all as something that would pass. If you find yourself in such a position regularly, and one or both of you doesn't really want to muster the effort to fix it, it's time to end it. Story 38. When the conversations over FaceTime become a routine, when the only I love yous you receive are quickly said at the end of a phone call, when bringing up something you feel strongly about is considered a fight and quickly shut down. I recently broke up with my girlfriend, and these were the signs. Story 39. When every single fight or encounter for the last 8 years only ended when you took 100 of all of the blame and punished yourself adequately. When you find yourself with a loaded gun in your mouth and you just pray for it to go off because you can't stand another day with her. Little things like that. Story 40. Resentment. You know that one thing they did like 6 months ago and they apologized and you moved on, but you never really got over it. But then you're crazy if you bring it up again, but you don't. And instead of talking about your feelings, slowly everything they do starts to bother you. So you start taking overtime at work or pick up time consuming hobbies just so you're not bothered by them. The love is over, the writing is on the wall, but you don't acknowledge it. So that new girl you just met at your job, you start bonding with her over innocent shoot, like you like art, and you see on their Instagram that they paint. So now you're talking to her about art, not hitting on her, but you're fascinated by her work. And you realize you're enjoying talking to her about a common interest more than you like talking to your wife. Because you don't really like talking to her anymore. She never wants to talk about anything fun anymore. She just wants to talk about serious shoot and nag you about small shoot, like why you do your laundry a certain way. Now she's getting upset because you're paying too much attention to this other girl. And even though nothing is going on, you start feeling guilty about showing another woman so much affection. Then when you finally just ask her to watch a movie with you, you find out that she's in a committed relationship. So now you're going through a divorce, and that girl you thought was your second chance doesn't want to talk to you about art anymore because you made things weird. All because you resented that one thing your wife did that bothered you 6 months ago. Story 41. For me, when I no longer cry. For more context, big fights always cause me to end up in tears. I dislike it, but I can't help it. I get emotional because I care so much. I just want the fight to end, no matter who started it, so we can be happy with each other again. In my previous relationships, I knew I was checking out because I didn't cry anymore. I didn't care if we were in a fight. I didn't care if either stayed mad. My fiance and I rarely fight, but when we do, I cry. He dislikes seeing me cry, but knows it's actually a good thing. Story 42. Going through a divorce here and woke up thinking about the time we were walking somewhere for enjoyment with our children. I got a leg cramp and needed to stop. He didn't stop. If your significant other can't look out for your well-being or even be bothered by it, then you are doomed. Story 43. How you argue. If you get into arguments, work your way through to a solution and leave it with both of you. Not necessarily happy, but more or less satisfied with the outcome, you've got a decent shot. If your arguments don't really end, you just stop talking about them. Or if one of you has to win every time, there are serious problems ahead. Story 44. When intimacy became mentally painful, when I cried during it because it had no connection anymore. We had been fighting for months and I had put a somewhat end on things, but we were still living together. That last time where there was no more connection between us was the last nail for me. Nothing he said or tried to reconnect that for me. Don't avoid therapy until the other person is done. Don't accuse someone of not trying to make it work when they have been trying for months and you have ignored it. And never open up your relationship to fix it unless it is something you both truly want. It will break you or them, and there is no fixing it. Story 45. If you are here looking for random signs that tell you what to do in your life, and they seem to point to ending your relationship, like, hey, I've been hearing a lot of breakup songs, could this be over? Then that means you subconsciously want it to be over already, and you're unclear or feel you don't have enough reason to, so you're looking for outside validation. If what you call signs lead to a reconsideration of your heart or give love another try, that means you should, because that's what your mind's heart wants. If all signs point to break up, then do it. Even if you cry at the thought of losing the what you thought was your love of 20 years and you assumed was your soulmate. Your intuition knows. Listen to it. If you're here trying to jerk if your relationship is over, it probably is. If you're here and you're sensing your relationship is over, and that is eating you up inside, it isn't. Go find a post about how to fix a rough patch in a relationship. Or better yet, stop looking to complete outsiders who have no idea about how you or your partner feel about each other, and be strong enough in your own feelings to fix or end things. Story 46. When you know that you are putting more effort, time, and or consideration to the relationship, while you know the other doesn't give a shoot. Also, it's when you feel envious of other relations, for example, other couples' relationships, and try to force yourself into being something else. Story 47. Talking from pretty recent personal experience, I can make a small list. Whenever you feel like the things you do with just the two of you feel like an obligation, more than something you should enjoy. Smaller things, like odd things in behavior or perfectly normal human flaws, stick out way too much and lead to grievances. Either you or the other person keep on checking their phone in one-on-one personal interactions, like dinner, watching TV together. You don't feel as proud of being in a relationship with the other person anymore. Forgot to add the biggest indication that I experienced. Intimacy feels more like a chore than anything else. Story 48. Guilt. I had a lot of relationships before I met my the one. Whenever my relationship was declining, I would feel guilty about numerous things. Meeting solo with friends, being late, etc. Now I have been with my so for 6 years. She almost never makes me feel guilty. We reflect a lot about day-to-day stuff, can talk about anything, almost never argue. Long story short, if both parties have the room to feel happy without having to feel guilty, you are gonna have a good time. Maybe one important lesson I learned in my year all my life is you don't need a person to make you happy. Learn to be happy alone and focus on giving happiness in a relationship, not receiving it. If both parties do, then you have yourself a good one. Story 49. They show no actual empathy and can't argue like an adult, like literal temper tantrum behavior. Won't listen, won't even try to explain their side or try to understand yours. That was a red flag at the time, and I stayed for 3 years to realize I was dating a narcissist. Story 50. 90 of the stuff written here is what happens after being in a relationship for long periods of time. The truth is every single relationship is different because every single person is different. If you go looking for a sign your relationship is ending, then it's ending. If that is in your head, then it's already the beginning of the end there. If you look for stuff, you will find it, period. Story 51. If you don't live together, when you have absolutely no will to go on the next date but think it's only you being lazy. If you live together, the only moment you actually can relax is when he's not home, but you think it's because you are together so often that you need a small break from him. Story 52. When they suddenly don't have the ability to make time for you. Near the end of my last relationship, I was doing all the work to make date nights happen. When it fell to her to come see me or do things, it was always, I'm tired, or I just want to stay in. Near the end, if I didn't go to her, nothing happened at all. Story 53. When the QTZ romantic things stop. When what you once found QTZ or romantic becomes an eye roll, groan, or simply annoying. When little quirks start to bug you, or yours bugs them. When they begin to show more interstate in something else than what you are saying, aside from those that truly multitask, or those that actually suffer from sparkle vision, aka ADD. When things begin to shift from coping with life, the world by talking to, or spending time with each other, to reading, binge watching, or social media. When they complain about you not talking to them, but every time you try, they stick their nose into something while you are talking. When you feel obligated to reply to a message from them, answer a call from them, or spend time with them, when you find a way to be too busy to care. If you look forward to having the bed to yourself, when either of you frequently need time away. When there is an uptick in smoking or drinking on either side. When you feel that you have to rationalize their behavior or make excuses for it. When you think that if it wasn't for the kids, you would have already left. When you look for excuses to stay. When little things are big issues. When issues never seem to resolve but keep haunting your every argument. When fighting becomes the norm. When you feel like a paycheck and nothing more. Lack of commitment to simple things like going out, hanging with friends, making no real plans, but maybe we will do X. Interests push larger amounts of time between you. When a friend's issue becomes consuming or takes precedence, another two-way street, asking for relationship advice. When the blame game starts. Any sign of abuse, not going to list them here, but you can easily look them up. Pushing good friends away, either side. When it feel like you do all the work in the relationship. There are plenty more, and some of what I listed others have already posted. Just remember that a healthy relationship is a two-way street. A lot of give and take, balanced, takes a lot of work to maintain, and quality is way better than quantity. Time apart should not be needed, but should be done occasionally. Story 54. You stop being stupid together. The occasional shoot day or trip is normal, but if you don't look back and take the piss out of yourselves, or you don't just do silly things together like dancing in the kitchen or pretending to hump them when they bend over, just stupid stuff, then you probably can't be bothered or no longer feel comfortable enough to make a fool of yourself in front of them. If you can humiliate yourself comfortably in front of so then you're probably no longer comfortable with them. Also, if you're in a group of people and they make a joke and it's the funniest shoot you've ever heard but no one else gets it, then in my opinion, you're pretty stable. Story 55. Had a great guy I was just with for 2 years. While getting to know him, I'd ask questions about where he's going in life. What does he want out of a partner? You know, normal conversations for when you have been with someone for over 6 months. He'd say he hadn't ever thought about it. He didn't know. And if I brought up anything remotely serious, he'd change the subject, talk about his cat, fall asleep, send me a meme via text. What really made me realize that I should break up with him was that we were worlds apart emotionally, and that in the end he just wanted a companion in order not to be lonely in life. He never opened up the way your lover should, in or out of bed. Unless he crawled out of the depths like Cthulhu, I had to dump him. It was like dating a void. Story 56. One thing I've noticed when guys are coming closer to breaking up with their girlfriends is when they prioritize games and friends more and more over their lover, especially in instances where they could include their friends and lover, but simply don't. One sign a girl hasn't found another guy and might leave her boyfriend is when she describes the guy as so stupid. Then it is usually followed up by a giggle. Of course, that's more of something I've noticed among teenagers and college students. Story 57. I don't know if this is non-obvious, but it didn't fully occur to me until far after it happened in my marriage. When you stop caring whether the other person is happy. That seems super obvious, but translating it to everyday situations makes it seem less so. If your partner needs to be verbally complimented, do you make the effort to do that even when it's not an obvious time for it? If your partner cares about keeping a super clean home, do you make the effort to maintain their desired level? If your partner craves quality time together, do you make time for that in your schedule at the expense of other things you want to do? There are thousands of examples. If you truly care for that person, these are things you either ideally actively want to do or probably more realistically for most, care enough about the person relationship to do even if it's not your natural reaction. Based on my limited experience and lots of talks with friends, I think it's really difficult to come back from that tipping point. If you lack even the base amount of care love it takes to want to generally make your partner happier, your capacity to do the smaller things that maintain a healthy relationship is low. So the larger ones that will be encountered in the tenure of one of any length will be almost impossible. If you find yourself saying a version of, whatever, I just don't care enough to do that, or that's dumb, in response to lots of relatively low cost in terms of time, money, effort, or any other resource, things that you know would make your partner happy, it may be time to rethink things. Story 58. You find yourself defending your partner to your friends and family. You console yourself that relationships are hard work. You discover that one of you says your name and I instead of we normally. When arguments happen, there are a lot of why I did that explanations and defensiveness instead of understanding and humility. When you sigh with dread instead of sigh with relief at the thought of walking into a room with your partner. Story 59. When there's a thing you've previously always done together and both enjoyed, but suddenly they tell you that you don't have to do the thing if you don't want to, even though you never didn't want to. Specifically, me and my ex had annual passes to Disney. I was talking about renewing mine when she said, "You don't have to if you don't want to." I asked, "Why shouldn't I want to?" And we broke up right there. Story 60. In my experience, as soon as it feels like you're waiting for something, like for things to get back on track, or for him, her to get through this phase or whatever, you're past the point of no return. Also, a subtle and steady increase in physical distancing is a strong indication that it's over, even if they don't know it yet themselves. Story 61. When you give up, there's nothing more to it. It is your commitment that makes the relationship, not the other person's. Bad times can be overcome with hope. Good times do not guarantee a relationship will continue or be a happy one. What does not work is to calculate and predict a relationship's end. That's because people will surprise you and the human heart is not predictable. Story 62. Not so much non-obvious, but when she tells the therapist during our sessions that the only reason she wants me around is because I pay the bills. Also constantly call me insane and wants me down medicine. That hasn't worked for shoot, when all I ever wanted was physical attention and emotional support from her. Story 63. I have no idea why this is, but every time I've been in a relationship and I get dumped, it's almost always preceded by my ex getting an incredibly drastic haircut. Not sure if this is a common thing, but I've noticed it after it's happened 5 times over the course of high school and college. Story 64. You catch him on a dating site because you see the icon flash up on a notification whilst you're sitting next to him and eating breakfast together. If you're dumb like me, then it's only mildly concerning because there's obviously a perfectly good explanation for it. Story 65. When we had a baby together and she decided that I needed to sleep in another room because my snoring was loud, which no big deal, that's fine. At one point, she stopped wearing the engagement ring I gave her as to not hurt the baby. Her mother lived with us, and if I would suggest that she watch the baby for just a few hours so that we could possibly have date night, she always said no. Once, I bought tickets to a concert and ended up going by myself. Then every time I would suggest that we take our baby and visit my family that lived in town, she always had an excuse as to why she didn't feel like going. I was never allowed to take our daughter anywhere by myself. I feel like she didn't trust me with keeping our baby safe. My family saw our daughter once in the hospital, the day after she was born, and then one more time 9 months later for a few hours while her mother accompanied me to my family's house. But she stayed home. That was the day before we moved out of state. I had a horrible gut feeling when we were getting ready to move that as soon as we got where we were going, the relationship would be over. Sure enough, we moved, and one day we started to argue, and she just blurted out that she didn't want to be with me anymore. I moved out into my own place in a state that I can't stand to be in, but I'll do anything to see my daughter. I saw it coming to an end before we moved, but I tried everything on my end to keep us together. I figured it's always rough after you have a child. Everything was great, even shortly after we had the baby, but I guess people just change sometimes. Story 66. When it's clear they are blatantly ignoring you and scoffing you off. Sure, you were busy this weekend. You've been busy every weekend. You clearly ignored my text asking to hang out again this weekend. What hurts most of all was the fact that you were too much of a private area to tell me you weren't interested and instead treated me like dirt. Lesson learned. To all of y'all out there, don't give the world to someone who won't even give you a clod of dirt. I made that mistake, and I wish I didn't have to waste 3 months of my time to learn it. Story 67. When you subconsciously feel insecure about opening up to them because you feel that they either won't care about it or it will lead to an argument. This cocooning habit in a relationship is a major red flag because by that point your mind is getting obvious signs that the relationship is headed towards darkness, but your heart keeps on believing to keep itself from breaking. Another major factor is not feeling the urge to keep them updated about your daily lives or any significant matter cause you know that it will be somehow made insignificant by them. Hope you guys get to know about these early signs and take action before these really take a toll on your relationship. Story 68. 20 years with the third wife here. She and I have known each other over 40 years. There was a rough patch a few years ago that seemed to last a few years. I didn't want to go home, and it felt like she didn't want me there. Fighting all the time, general state of tension most of the time. I'd ask myself, how much more of this can we endure? We kept at it, trying to talk and make it work. We did. Then one day I noticed the tension was lifting, and we moved forward. It was rough, but we are now more solid than ever. Story 69. Well, I had to stop and think for a minute. I had to look back at myself before we were together and realize that I used to be a good person, but no longer. And there was no possibility of being a good person while I was with her. Some people really are just sociopaths looking to use people and drain the life out of anyone around them. Story 70. Super non-obvious. When every time they call by your phone and you can't stop yourself from saying, "Fudge, why are you calling me, you cunt? I don't want to talk to you. You're just going to get mad at something insignificantly stupid and start a fight and scream at me? How can you seriously enjoy this? What part about this feels like a good relationship to you? Why do you want a lifetime of this? Fudge you stupid, insecure, narcissistic twat waffle." And then let it go to voicemail and pretend that you didn't get a missed call. I should have gotten out of that so much sooner than I did. Life is infinitely better. Story 71. I don't know if this is obvious or not, but it certainly wasn't to me at the end of my last relationship. Losing respect for the other person. You no longer have that high of an opinion of them. Of course, as a relationship goes on, you get more familiar with each other's flaws and unique challenges. But if you're no longer genuinely proud of who your partner is as a person, that's a bad sign. Story 72. They pick fights with you almost daily over inconsequential things. It's a constant struggle to be happy because you're walking on eggshells trying not to do something to piss them off. Nothing is good enough. You might find yourself consulting with friends to referee or get advice because the arguments are so petty stupid, you feel like you're taking crazy pills. In reality, what's really happening is they don't know how to break your heart. So each argument is a hammer to your relationship's foundation, and with each swing, they create cracks. Until one day they leave you on the day of your engagement party, tell you that you're both incompatible and that they need time because they're depressed. Yet your friends find them on Tinder, and then they knock someone up and are ultimately pressured to marry because of the pregnancy. Cheers! Story 73. If you've been gathering evidence for more than 2 years so that you can blindside your partner with a clear and one-sided case to a judge to get sole custody of your kid, while also you've been slowly quitting your vow so your child support calculation is better, this is probably a red flag you should address. Story 74. When you spend time together, but not actually spend time together. What I mean more specifically is when your partner is on their phone all the time or seems preoccupied with you or together. Relationships take work, and you should never get too comfortable and stop dating. You and them should enjoy each other's presence, and when you notice continually they would rather be doing something else, like being on their phone, laptop, etc., it's a bad sign that things are coming to an end. A lot of the time people think just physically being next to each other is enough, but it's definitely not. Make you man-woman feel special and not just a friend. Story 75. Body language when a couple are looking in different directions. I don't mean when there are lots of people or distractions. I mean when they are in a small group or at home and their attention and thoughts are out of sync, it shows by the direction they are facing. Source, my old marriage counselor. Story 76. A sense of obligation. Oh, I have to get her something for Christmas. Oh, I have to text him goodnight. Oh, guess I have to go see them. Once you start doing things because it's the right thing to do, you're done. You should want to see them, talk to them, be with them. No obligatory guilt. Story 77. When you are on vacation and don't feel happy to be there and consciously try to just appreciate the surroundings. When you don't have anything thing in common and take no interest in each other's activities beyond a high-level polite conversation. When you can't wait for dinners out to end because you are so bored. When you don't bring up things from your day as they will somehow be used in a fight against you. When you spend an entire dinner together without either one of you smiling except at the waiter. When you both feel annoyed when having to do even small things for each other. When you think of them, you can't find anything that inspires joy or admiration in you. Story 78. Literally, When you catch yourself doing this, make note. Your relationship is imperiled. To roll one's eyes is to completely dismiss another person. It may be a hostile social act committed behind someone else's back, a deliberate social assassination of your partner's credibility. You may do it purposefully in full view of your target during an argument, delighting secretly that you can needle their rage further along while hiding behind the base truth that you've said nothing to further the disagreement. I once saw a VP of engineering roll their eyes at a senior programmer during a meeting. The programmer immediately called out the VP for the eye roll and treated it as though an audible fudge you had been delivered, because socially, that was the exact message. If you're going to disagree with your partner, be honest in your disagreement. If you catch yourself rolling your eyes, apologize. I'm sorry, that was dismissive of me. I'm feeling exasperated by this because let me refresh my tea and try harder to listen when I get back. Train yourself out of the eye roll and address your feelings with words instead. Story 79. You stop evolving. A long-term relationship will still change from time to time. A new hobby, schedule, or major life event will require adaptation. No one stays the same person forever. If you find yourself constantly finding compromises and/or ignoring changes, it will catch up to you. Either you're too scared or don't care enough to evolve together. Story 80. When them being affectionate just bugs you. I remember right before I broke up with my ex, anytime he tried to snuggle or kiss or be generally anywhere near my face, I was immediately irritated and squirmed away. I just couldn't stand it. Though he did just get back from a 3-month solo trip in Japan, and maybe my subconscious knew he was a cheating jerk. Oh, also, if they are no longer excited for plans you had made, like wanted to move in together, now they just kind of avoid the subject. Story 81. They no longer want to have intimacy. They will make excuses to not see you, like being too busy all the time, but before they would do whatever it took to see you. Sometimes you can just tell there is an awkward, uncomfortable vibe when it used to feel right and natural. Story 82. When people are calculating everything, a friend of mine and his girlfriend would always be moaning and calculating the smallest things that most people do for some God knows reasons. Example, I did the dishes the other day. I cooked the other day. I did the vacuum last time. I paid for your Coke before, etc. Some might say, but that's very normal. Everyone should share workload, blah, blah, blah. No, once you start calculating all the things, you aren't in a relationship. You're in a calculation circle. Story 83. This is a late response. I saw this last week while having a tough time with my husband, and it really got me thinking. The stress of the holidays lead to fighting. We actually had been fighting a lot. And yeah, sometimes the thought of just leaving sounds so much easier. But that's the thing. Relationships aren't always easy. You are two different people, and that's important to remember. Two different people who aren't expected to always understand each other. You aren't expected to always love what the other person does, says, thinks, etc. It would be really boring to be with someone who is the same as you. I read so many of these and I was like, yup, I've felt this way before. I've felt so annoyed by everything he's done in a day, and I am positive he has felt the same. That's not the reason your relationship is over or coming to an end or whatnot. We have gotten through a lot of tough times, and I dislike to say it, but social media really makes people expect their relationships to be perfect. Good news. No one has a perfect relationship. We are all going to hurt each other's feelings at one point or another, and we are all going to be stubborn and not want to apologize. Because whoever wants to be wrong? Everything I have read, not wanting to try, wanting to give up all of them, it's normal short term. Not wanting to fight anymore, being exhausted by each other's stubbornness, it's normal. The question you need to ask yourself is, can you honestly see yourself without him, her? Every time I think that, it's like game over. Why are we fighting? I also think it's important to remember why you fell in love, if you are in love with him, her in the first place. Because in a fight, she isn't that person, but that person is still there. And you need to remember that. Giving up is a lot easier sometimes, but relationships take work. Story 84. If you don't see a future with them, thing is, arguments and conflict will arise in any and every relationship. What's important is that you can resolve the issue at hand calmly and maturely. You both are different people. Don't forget, you will both have different views. No matter how similar they are, they will still be a different outlook. Respect their opinion and let them completely open up and finish their thought. Don't overtalk them, and if need, which some people do, take a moment, stop, breath, think, and let your emotions settle before you say anything. Story 85. For me, it was when I was paying attention to other guys. If a guy hit on me, I felt obligated to say no rather than, oh, I want to say no because I'm madly in love. So eventually I broke up with him and followed my heart to my now best friend and boyfriend. Story 86. When you have a big argument about that thing each other does that really bothers you or is fudge up, and fight it out, talk it out, express yourself. Come to realize in the conversation where you were wrong and ultimately make up and vow to be better going forward. Then do it all again like 2 weeks later because nothing changed. Story 87. There's no real intimacy, physical affection. My ex wouldn't let me snuggle up to him at night, even if it was cold. He just didn't want physical contact, and his interest in intimacy began significantly waning. He wasn't having an affair. That would have been too much effort. He was just not interested. If the affection is waning, that's a warning. Story 88. The moment that person starts detaching and stops showing affection should get worse and worse over time. It's 200B. If it's a once in a blue moon argument or period she's having and it goes back to normal afterwards, you could dismiss it as just being pissed off at you. But if it's been about a week or more and you're seeing a decline in affection, that is most likely a good indicator he wants the relationship to end, at least in my experience. X200B, also if the person is starting to increase in alienating the relationship and saying things that give the impression that you two aren't the same or aren't together, etc., that is also a very good indicator. They are most likely trying to prepare you for separation or trying to hint at you with implications like that. X200B, it's hard to pick up for the first time, but once you catch on to it, you'll notice it whenever it happens again. Story 89. Cliche as it sounds, but when you don't talk anymore like you used to do, it's when nothing has changed in your lifestyle, but you just don't look for each other anymore. No one's having a heavy stress on their job. No one's going through something big. Just things getting boring, and soon you realize that both of you are fine growing apart. Communication really does a lot. Story 90. No longer having arguments, not missing each other, noticing other people that you might be slightly attracted to more, switching off when they're talking, being inexplicably, horribly glad when you get home and they're not around for some reason, realizing that most of their friends irritate you, deciding that their family is not really one you want to be part of or one you'd want to subject your children to, finding you can no longer talk to them about everything. I'm so happy to say that while I've experienced every one of these, none of them crop up in my marriage. Story 91. In hindsight, when it becomes more difficult to say, I love you, I would only say it when I meant it. When it stopped coming out organically, I thought it would be something that would come back once I finished my degree and stopped being so busy. Story 92. I'll just go by what happened when I finally realized it was going nowhere with my ex-GF. 1. Emotionless, short text messages. 1B, high response time, low reply rate, low initiation rate. 2, lack of planning. 3, princess mentality. 4, just being plain nasty or rude. 5, guilt tripping, requesting me to pay for meals and other things just because I had more money in the bank. 6, leaning away from me while hanging out, moving leg away if we touched, not wanting to cuddle, hug, or kiss. And last but most important, still talk to ex. Story 93. In a long-distance relationship, if you're willing to travel to them to see you, but they never offer to come to you. My recent experience would say he wanted to see me, but things would come up on the weekend to prevent him to travel to see me. But it was cool if I was coming to him. Story 94. When they stop being excited to see you and instead go, why are you here? For context, he used to invite me to this bar with his work friends. Due to social anxiety and a lot of work, I hardly ever had the time energy to go. At first, when I'd get myself to go, he'd be like, oh my God, I'm so glad you're here. I love you so much. I want you to meet my friends. At the span of maybe 3 months into this new job with work drinking buddies, it turned into, why are you here? I thought you were going to be home tonight. Yeah, but since our conflicting schedules make it impossible to spend time together, I thought I could make time today. But I don't want you here today. No bueno. Story 95. When you have to phrase a sentence 100 correct, solve the puzzle in order to get an answer out of them. When you become disabled and can no longer help support financially and or physically your family, and they don't help you, even though you're incapable of helping yourself, I make food to eat, help with children, can bend over easily to lift the seat, and they yell at you to put the seat down after you finish. Expects you to put seat in full forward position when you are tall and finish with the vehicle. Same disability. When you joke around exactly like someone else did when she found their joke funny, And when you do it, it's offensive or not funny at all. When you make something, anything, and they find anything wrong with it, when other examples made by others that were praised are less quality than what you made. Ad nauseum, just general nitpicking in order to make your life miserable. Story 96. A lot of my relationships just fizzled out due to lack of communication and not much prior warning. But that's fine. It's worse when you realize how little they actually care about how you feel. Forgetting what you like and dislike or saying hurtful things that aren't even necessarily intentional, but you know that they didn't think twice about how it may come across. Passivity is the sign of a relationship's end times, as is disregarding the feelings of your significant other. If you're the only one putting in effort, it's time to go. Anyone can say they love you up and down all day, but if there are no actions to it, it's just words. Story 97. Saying these as someone who, after 2 really bad relationships I stayed in way too long, used to get cold with people pretty quickly. I feel bad about it now, but it was my defense mechanism to find reasons why someone wasn't going to work out. Picking fights over everything. Not just being upset, wanting to actually argue over everything you do. People can be upset or depressed, and it could be something not relating to you at all, or you might have done something hurtful, and they're not capable of resolving it with you properly. I mean, just wanting to argue in a way that gives them an excuse to not be around you, or even to keep making you look like the bad guy so they don't feel so bad about thinking of ending it or even cheating. No real passion intimacy is not what I mean. I mean, if you have intimacy and they're robotic and not being